Meteorologist Dylan Federico with a tropical update for May 15th, 2025. The official start of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season still a little over 2 weeks away, but today is an important day because the National Hurricane Center begins issuing tropical weather outlooks. And the reason why they're doing this a little bit before the official start of the hurricane season is because over the past decade or so, we've seen a big uptick in storms developing during the month of May. So the big question is, will we see a storm before the official start of hurricane season on June 1st? Let's take a look out in the Atlantic and see what's going on. All right, here's the wide shot today on satellite. And just looking at the big picture, not a lot going on at the moment, at least where it matters. Notice the Western Caribbean, up into the Gulf, and just off the southeastern United States coast over towards the Bahamas. There's hardly a cloud today. In fact, high pressure and firm control there. There's a little bit of disturbed weather back off to the east of the islands, but I'm not expecting much from this. All right, so here's the first tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center. This goes out 7 days. And by the way, this is issued every day at 2 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., and 8 p.m. as well. What this does is it tells us where we may see some development over the next 7 days or so. A very useful tool from the National Hurricane Center. But right now, not expecting much over the next week or so. But the thing is that this is very normal. If you look at the activity over the course of the hurricane season, let me just point out we are right about here. So it's very normal for things to be quiet. And honestly, it's not until around August 20th that we see our activity really ramp up, and the peak of the hurricane season is on September 10th. So we have a long way to go, and it's totally normal for things to be quiet right now. But if we were to see some development, this is where we typically look. So the map that you're looking at is where every tropical depression or tropical storm has developed since 1851 during the last week of May, May 21st through the 31st to be more specific. But it's the usual spots, right? The Western Caribbean, the Gulf, really just the Eastern Gulf, and then off the southeastern United States coast is kind of that hot spot. And then, of course, the Eastern Pacific does see some activity as well. But that's where we typically look this time of the year. So the question is, okay, we know the National Hurricane Center is not expecting any development over the next 7 days, but we do have computer models that go out a lot farther. And this is one of my favorite tools. This is the European Ensemble Map. We get basically 51 versions of the European model with slightly different opinions, but mostly thinking the same. And what this does is it provides us a consensus of where we might see some development. And this goes out 10 days. And notice, nothing on that map. It is barren. So I think we can say in high confidence that at least for the next 10 days, we're not expecting any tropical development in the Gulf, the Caribbean, or anywhere else in the Atlantic basin where it matters. But I do like looking at long range models as well. And as we get towards June, I think that this can change. So the map that you're looking at here is the MJO and where it might be. And basically, the MJO is just an area of rising air that propagates across the earth. And where it goes, conditions are more favorable for thunderstorms. So think of it this way in the most simplest of terms. You need rising air for thunderstorms. If you get thunderstorms, you get lowering pressure, and those conditions allow for more favorable conditions for tropical depressions, storms, or even hurricanes. So let me just kind of show you what we're looking at here. So we're starting at the top, right around May 15th here, okay? And we want to focus down here on this map. So here's the Eastern Pacific, and then here's the Atlantic down here. So as we go forward in time, notice MJO is coming back into the Atlantic basin, and it looks like maybe around the start of the month, early June, things become more favorable, and it stays that way for much of the month. So I think as we get into early, maybe mid-June, this is going to be a time period that we may see a better chance at some tropical development and just more favorable conditions in general for maybe our first named storm to form. And we can see this kind of with the overall pattern. I like using pattern recognition in the longer range. So what you're looking at here is the mid-levels of the atmosphere across North America, and also you see the Caribbean down at the bottom. And what we're looking for is a type of pattern that may support tropical mischief. And here we go, you have it. This is for June 10th. So this is a long ways out, but this is the kind of pattern you look for. And I call this the ridge over troubled water pattern. So notice over North America, you have high pressure. And then below it, down in the Caribbean, notice not quite as high, right? So we may see low pressure down below. And this is where we typically look for tropical trouble early in the year. So this does make a lot of sense. So, are the models seeing anything? Let's take a look. This type of a setup does favor the Central American gyre, which is pretty typical early on in the season. So what the Central American gyre is it's basically an area of disturbed weather that develops over Central America. And usually you get an early season storm or two that develops from this, and you kind of see how it happens, right? You have winds blowing out of the west from the eastern Pacific, and then the Caribbean, you have the strong easterly winds, and then usually in the Gulf, you have some kind of northerly or northeasterly types of winds, and you end up getting that spin down there, and usually you do get one or two storms out of this, whether it's on the Pacific side or on the Atlantic side. It's pretty common that we do end up seeing some kind of a system early on in the year. We did last year, and we do most years. So when you know it, ridge over troubled water pattern. We also have the MJO returning to the basin. And as we get into the first week of June, notice precipitation increasing down in the Western Caribbean. So what you're looking at is the precipitation anomalies. So compared to normal, relatively speaking, above average rainfall in the Western Caribbean and over into the Eastern Pacific as well. So this is a sign to me that the gyre is going to likely develop as we get over into the early parts of the month of June. And what we're looking at here is, or what we're looking for here is above average precipitation. So think about it. If you have a tropical system out there, it's likely to produce a lot of rain, and you're looking for above average rainfall. And there you go. So this is an area that I think we'll be keeping an eye on as we head into the first week of June. And when you know it, long range European model, this is the probability of a tropical storm. It's highlighting that area in the Western Caribbean, maybe the Gulf, or the Eastern Pacific as well. Both areas are pretty climatologically favored this time of the year. This is for the first week of June, and then a little bit later, you can see maybe moving up into the Gulf as well. So as we get into early June, this is an area that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, but still long range. So I would take this with a grain of salt at this point. But if there were to be any kind of tropical mischief down there, this is an area that I would be keeping a close eye on. But it makes a lot of sense, right? When you look at the June climatology in the Atlantic Basin, going all the way back to 1851, notice the Western Caribbean, the Gulf, and then just off the southeastern United States coast. This is a pretty typical area for development this time of the year. Something either usually spins up and goes up into the eastern Gulf, or maybe something spins up to the east of Florida and then kind of goes out to sea. Very normal this time of the year. So if we do see our first name storm, the first name on the list is Andrea. And here at my YouTube page, Facebook page, X account, Instagram, all of those accounts, TikTok, I will be updating you throughout the hurricane season.